Very well.
Well, so today, as Prabhu said, our guest speaker is His Grace Krsnadasa Kaviraja Prabhuji. And Prabhu is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, and he served in the Ottawa and Toronto temples since 1974. Prabhu serves on the Sannyas Ministry. He's the present chair of the GBC Deputies, and he also serves on the board of directors for ISKCON Ottawa, Toronto, as well as some satellite temples in the Greater Toronto area. And additionally, Prabhu has made regular appearances in His Holiness Bhakti Mag Maharaj's dramatic productions, and we're very fortunate to hear from him today. I'll hand it over to you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much. Do we do a little Jairanam or do we not?
Sure, Prabhu, if you'd like to.
Okay, I'll just quickly chant. Srila Prabhupada always liked to do it that way, so. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ruta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitang Tang Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Hopefully I can make it worth your while. And one of the themes that I was thinking of over the last few weeks was that everybody wants freedom. And I was going to title this talk today, Achieving Freedom Through Surrender. So as jivas, the small infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have some of the qualities of Krishna. Unfortunately, fortunately for us, being parts and parcels of Krishna, if we dovetail everything that we do in Krishna's service, then automatically we are fulfilling our real position. And we were in the spiritual sky with Krishna, enjoying eternal pastimes with Krishna. And yet, because we are endowed with free will, and we are what is called Tatashta Shakti, we can be sometimes under the influence of the material energy and sometimes under the influence of the spiritual energy. So we have found ourselves now under the influence of the material energy. And for those of us who are here today, I would think that most of us who are here today have realized that we are not free. This is a very difficult position in the material world that we are in, due to the fact that we are forced to act in so many different ways due to our material nature. For instance, we get hungry. Our material bodies, many of you may even be fasting somewhat for Ekadasi, and so you're getting hungry. And some people fast completely on Ekadasi, or even, I know there's some devotees, one devotee in Toronto that I know of for sure. And it's not necessary, but he does it, and he's always done it. And for him, it's quite easy. Personally, I can't do it, but he does Nirjala Ekadasi every Ekadasi, which is really quite amazing. But his body is set up that way. But I cannot do that. If I try to go without water for too long, everything starts to break down. I cannot no longer think properly. I can barely move. I really go into a complete, almost death-like state. So it's better for me to actually drink some water and to eat anything that's, no grains, no beans, like that. But in the material world also, we find that, so many people throughout the ages have been wanting freedom from different material conditions that they find themselves in. And for instance, we know in North America especially, and actually around the world, there were so many different cultures, and even in the Vedic culture, there were slavery was part of the culture back then. And slaves were always trying to get their freedom because they were often under very bad slave masters, and they were suffering very much. And so they were always trying to become emancipated, to achieve this state of freedom. Of course, it is still, once one achieves that state of emancipation in the material world, a so-called state of emancipation in the material world, is one really truly free, because still they're being forced by their material body to do so many different things, and there's so many the demigods have an influence on how on the different things that happen to us, whether it rains or whether it's snowing or whether it's too hot or too cold, all these things that the demigods are in control of. And then there's other living entities that are constantly harassing us in terms of bacteria and viruses like COVID and like that. So there's so many ways, and so that's the Adi Daivik, Adi Bautik, and then our own material body, as I was saying before, is constantly harassing us with different desires and needs, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, like that. These things are there concomitant with the material body. So there really is no freedom in the material world. And Srila Prabhupada was, as we know, part of the Gandhi movement in India back in the beginning of the 20th century. And he was trying to help India achieve its independence from the British rule. And the Brits had been trying to keep the British rule, and they'd been treating a lot of the Indian people very badly. And, it was a state of where the Indian people were often being treated as slaves, as servants, and when they tried to become more free, then they were often beaten down by the British. Some of the British were okay, but many of them were not. And so they felt that if as a nation, we have to get out from under this British rule. And so there was a big movement. Mahatma Gandhi was one of the heads of the movement to remove British rule in India. And Srila Prabhupada was part of that movement when he was going to university. And he had been brought up by his father to be very spiritually aware. His father was a Gaudiya Vaishnava. And he was often having sadhus come into the house, and they were chanting, and he was always praying that his son Abai would take up devotional service. And so Abai Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, before he was a Swami, in university days, Abai Charan was his name. He was often interested in checking out different spiritual personalities. And unfortunately, as we know, in India, there and everywhere around the world, there are many charlatan spiritual leaders who are not interested in the real welfare of their followers, but just interested in getting some name, fame, money, like that. So Srila Prabhupada had gone to many of these, and he was starting to become a little, you could say, unimpressed. He was very unimpressed with all the different spiritual leaders that he had encountered. But he still felt that, this Gandhi movement was important. And of course, Gandhi, he was somewhat self-controlled. He was not interested. He was very humble and a very exemplary leader in a lot of ways. And so Srila Prabhupada was following in that movement. So when a friend came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Abai, my friend, I have met a sadhu who is very humble, wonderful person, and very much understands the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition and is teaching it so nicely. And at first, Abhay Charan said to his friend, "No, I don't really think, I don't want to go see another holy person. I've been unimpressed with so many others." And the, luckily for us, the friend impressed upon Abhay Charan, "No, you've got to come and see. He's completely different from all the others." And so Abhay Charan went and met with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and immediately listened to a lecture, and then immediately was impressed with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's understanding of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and the true understanding that we are not these bodies, that we're spirit souls, and that we're meant to get out of the material world, and exactly how to go about doing it in accordance with the ways put down in writing by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and his followers. So Srila Prabhupada was still, even after the lecture, he had a chance to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and so still being part of Mahatma Gandhi's movement, he said, "How will the people of the world take up this message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu if we are, as a country, India is still under the British rule? If we can't even get our own independence, how is the rest of the world ever going to listen to this message?" And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, rightly so, gave the answer that this is a purely spiritual message that has nothing to do with the external material body. And so you are not Indian, I am not Indian, the rest of the world are not white, black, and so many different races, but we are all spirit souls. And the only way to achieve real freedom is to follow the teachings of Sri Chaitanya, of Lord Krishna, as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Sampradaya, right down to today. So immediately Abhay Charan was like, "All right, now I understand. Yes, this," and he accepted in his mind, "This is my guru, and I will be taking instruction from him and understanding this science of Krishna consciousness more intensely." So it was a huge change for Abhay Charan, as it has been perhaps for many of us. We were born, some of us were born here in the West without a lot of Krishna consciousness in our younger days. But as soon as many of us were searching for the absolute truth, and as soon as we encountered the absolute truth, we took it up. I was actually 19 years old when I moved into the temple in Ottawa, and I was going to Ottawa University, and I was searching for the absolute truth. And when I met the devotees and learned more about the science of Krishna consciousness, I realized that this needs to be a very important part of my life, and I have to establish that. I've so far spent 19 years in the material world, completely unaware of who I am spiritually, and now I have to at least spend another 19 years finding out who I am spiritually. So I surrendered to the temple and to Srila Prabhupada. And in July of 1974, I was fortunate enough to take initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tells us that we need to give up. We've ended up in this material world because we were thinking that we wanted to be independent of Krishna. Krishna's controlling everything in the spiritual world. I mean, the devotees are all constantly thinking, how can I serve Krishna? How can I make things better for Krishna? How can I arrange all different pastimes for Krishna? And it's a constant, and Krishna's also thinking, how can I make things better for all these living entities? And so it's a constant engagement like that. Who can outdo the other in terms? But occasionally there's that spark of independence which makes this conditioned spirit soul think, wait a minute, he's got the upper hand here. He's always controlling everything. I want to be independent of him. And so as soon as the living entity, the Jivatma, thinks like that, we end up in the material world. And the freedom that we had in the spiritual world to do things for Krishna and to accomplish so many things for Krishna, that freedom becomes very much limited, and we end up in so many different material bodies. Some of the material bodies afford us a certain amount of freedom. If one happens to end up in a demigod body or something, there's a little bit more freedom there. But if one ends up in an animal body, then there's very little freedom there, or even in a germ body or something. The amount of freedom can be very much restricted. Or a tree body, you get planted in one place and you stay there for sometimes thousands of years. So the freedom gets taken away once we enter into the material world. And so it's how do we reestablish that true freedom and reestablish ourselves in the spiritual sky? And Krishna says that by constantly endeavoring to sarvadharman prityaja mamekam sharanam vraja hangtvang sarva papebhyo mokshayashami ma suchaha, just abandon all varieties of religion, all dharma, everything that you think you need to do in the material world, just abandon all that and surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. And Krishna says that, Teshang satata yuktam nang bhajatang pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. Unto those great souls who worship me with love, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. So we get that intelligence by performing devotional service. And what is the main service that Srila Prabhupada talked about in almost every initiation letter? You can see in the Veda base, there are quite a few initiation letters in the Veda base. And Srila Prabhupada says, your most important service is to chant your 16 rounds every day. Now, maybe not everybody here has reached that state yet, because you haven't actually gotten to the point of being initiated. But what that signifies, that the most important service is simply chanting Hare Krishna. And that because what we are doing is we are reining in our material consciousness, which is constantly thinking about how to serve ourselves, and we're asking Krishna with our consciousness, as much as we chant Hare Krishna, we are asking Krishna, please engage me in your service. Please reestablish me in my position in the spiritual world. And that is what we are doing when we are chanting Hare Krishna. We are asking Krishna, please reestablish me in the spiritual world. Because in the material world, I'm completely bereft. There is nothing here that can bring happiness. There's nothing here that actually helps me to be free. And there are great examples of devotees who have engaged in the devotional service of Krishna and achieved the highest level that they're capable of achieving in terms of freedom. Take, for example, Dhruva Maharaj. He was the son of a king, And of course, he was the not the son of the favorite wife of the king. And so when the son of the favorite wife of the king was climbing up on the king's lap, the son of the Dhruva Maharaj thought, I'll also go up and climb up on my father's lap. But because of the enviousness in some way of the favorite wife of the king, she said, no, you cannot climb up there because you are not my son. You are the son of the second wife. And, Dhruva Maharaj felt, and rightly so, that I have the right to approach my father and to have this relationship with my father. But now he was being restricted. His freedom was being taken away, as it always is in the material world. And so he became very despondent, as people do when they lose their freedom. And he went to his mother and he said, and he was crying and very upset, that my freedom to enjoy pastimes with my father has been taken away. What can I do? And his mother said, I have heard that if you go to the forest and you meditate on the Supreme Lord, that the Supreme Lord will come and see you. I've heard this from the sages. And so I don't think when she told Dhruva Maharaj, she realized that he, as a 5-year-old boy, that he would suddenly just take off to the forest. But that is what Dhruva Maharaj did. He just immediately said, all right, mother, thank you very much for this wonderful instruction. I must go to the forest. And she was taken aback. What? You're only 5 years old. How can you go to the forest? And he said, no, I must go and meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and get my rightful place as the heir to my father and also become a king. And so she was, oh, all right, what can I do to stop you? If you have this strong desire, there's not much I can do to stop you. So off he goes to the forest, and he's meditating upon Krishna, as they did in those days, and he was meditating Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he was fasting and meditating, and simply had his mind fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by the strength of his meditation and his desire to his desire was motivated by some material thing, getting a kingdom, but at the same time he was presenting that material desire at the lotus feet of Krishna, and he was meditating on Krishna as the only person who could actually satisfy that desire. So he was understanding that Krishna was the only one, the Supreme Person, who could actually do this. And because of that devotion to the Supreme Person, we know that Krishna in the form of Lord Vishnu appeared before Dhruva Maharaj. And Dhruva Maharaj was standing there with his eyes closed, meditating, and Krishna suddenly, with all his effulgence, suddenly appeared in front of him, and so Dhruva Maharaj opened his eyes and he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he said at that very moment that I was wanting a kingdom. I was wanting everything in the material world to be mine, because I had been pushed away from having a kingdom, and I wanted even more. And but now I realize that I've been looking for broken pieces of glass this is all useless, and that just seeing you and understanding that I have the ability to serve you, and that I want to serve you, that has satisfied me completely. And so the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, you have this chance to have seen me now, and I will give you a very exalted place. And so we know that Dhruva Maharaj was awarded Dhruvaloka, which is the pole star. And so when we look up at the north, the pole star in the sky, which is in the northern sky, and I don't know if I know how to find the North Star. I'm very good at it, and I don't know if everybody in the audience knows how to find the pole star, but maybe one time when I'm in Ottawa and it's dark outside, might not work so well in the city because the lights, you might not see the star so much. But anyway, I know how to find the pole star, and that is Dhruvaloka. And Dhruva rules the entire universe from there, and he was awarded the entire universe to rule over by his devotion. Now, we as devotees should not be thinking that, okay, I have some material desire, therefore I'm going to pray to Krishna for that material desire, because material desires are all temporary. It is the devotion. So when Dhruva Maharaj realized that he no longer wanted anything material, that's when Krishna gave him everything material. So that he achieved full freedom, being the ruler of the entire universe, by fully surrendering to Krishna, saying, now I am yours, just do with me as you like. I was looking for a kingdom and I wanted all this material stuff, but now I just want to serve you. And because he said that, he was awarded complete freedom. So also we have the example of Narada Muni, who in a previous lifetime, his mother was a maidservant, and she used to serve often the great sages, and they would come and they would be speaking philosophy and taking prasadam. And then the remnants of their foodstuffs would be left on their plates, and his mother would feed him the remnants of the foodstuffs from their plates. And he would sometimes be sitting nearby, and he would hear the discourses about the Supreme Personality of Godhead from these sages. And in the next lifetime, just by that activity, he became surrendered to Krishna in such a way during his lifetime, after growing up in the presence of the sages and everything. He achieved a very high state of devotion to Krishna, and in the next lifetime he got the position of being Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, as we know, he's the most free of anybody practically. He goes into the spiritual sky, he can go right to Krishna Loka and speak with Krishna, and he can go down to the lowest planets and encourage those people to become better devotees. He can come to the middle planets, like the Earth Bhumandala that we're on, which is situated right in the middle of the middle planets, and he can encourage us in our devotional service. In fact, we know that Srila Prabhupada, sometimes the devotees, in one instance I know of for sure, in England, Srila Prabhupada, they had arranged a speaking engagement. Srila Prabhupada gave a talk even though almost nobody had shown up. Maybe 4 or 5 people had shown up in this huge hall. And then the devotees had a kirtan, and then they'd cooked a feast for 300 people, but nobody had shown up, so they ate most of the feast and took it outside and distributed and then afterwards they were very apologetic to Srila Prabhupada. We're so sorry that nobody came. And Prabhupada said, what? Did you not see that Narada Muni was here, and Lord Nityananda was here, and so many devotees were here? And the devotees were like, wow, Srila Prabhupada really has different spiritual vision. And so Srila Prabhupada was showing us that the Narada Muni can be anywhere and everywhere in the material world. Wherever there's a great kirtan going on and the devotees are all gathered together, Narada Muni is there, and he's encouraging everybody and dancing and chanting with us. We may not be able to see, but he is traveling around to so many different places and encouraging the devotees in their chanting. So that is the state of freedom that Narada Muni was able to achieve simply by taking some remnants and by a little association with these great saintly persons. So that is why now we're sitting here in the Sunday feast in Ottawa. We get to, there's a lot of great saintly devotees there, I know, who have all been working hard to help establish the temple there. I know Mathieu and all the different Leela Mohini and Anandamayi and all the names that I'm looking at, Kundalata Dasi and Harinamamrita, Akinchana Dandas, Sunil, Jay Prabhu, I know Jay from Toronto also. These are wonderful saintly persons who have definitely been working hard to manifest the wonderful temple that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the picture of all of you sitting there, looking at and there's the wonderful picture of Krishna and the cowherd boys taking prasadam on the wall, and so that is really what we're doing by giving up our Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, to come to the temple, to associate with the devotees, to take prasadam, and to chant Hare Krishna. We are actually beginning to achieve our freedom from the material constraints that are upon us from this material body, and we're beginning to realize our eternal spiritual natures. And the more that we come and do this, and the more that we can apply that principle in our day, when we go home, if we can chant Hare Krishna a little bit before going to work in the morning. Even if many of you are not initiated, simply go home in the morning and when you wake up tomorrow morning, before going to sleep at night even, chant Hare Krishna and ask Krishna to please help you remember him even perhaps in your dreams. It's wonderful when you wake up in the morning and you have had a dream of Krishna or Prabhupada like that. And you can read Krishna book. Prabhupada often had us reading Krishna book before taking rest at night so that we would remember these pastimes and they would be going through our heads, as we go to sleep. And in the morning, if you can chant Hare Krishna and get up and there's on this, I don't know if the link for the Sunday feast and the link for the Srimad Bhagavatam class every morning for the temple are the same. But anyway, there is a link for a Srimad Bhagavatam class in the morning. So one can chant Hare Krishna, hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, take your breakfast, which hopefully you've offered to Krishna, and therefore it becomes prasadam. And then you can go to work in a very high state of Krishna consciousness. And I know the mundane work sometimes brings one down from Krishna consciousness, but if the motivation is there that I am working to help establish the temple and help my family become more Krishna conscious and help myself become more Krishna conscious, in that way even the work, even though it may seem like we're doing some mundane thing, either construction or engineering or working in a lab or a doctor or nurse or whatever we're doing, it is no longer a mundane activity if we are doing it in a state of Krishna consciousness. If we are just trying to be conscious of Krishna while we're doing all those things. And you can do both at the same time. It's a little tricky, but, or at least if we're motivated to do the right thing and we do it with the motivation there, we may get totally absorbed in the material thing at hand, but because the motivation is to help us establish ourselves in Krishna consciousness and to help others become Krishna conscious, then it becomes a devotional activity. So we all have the ability to engage in chanting. We all have the ability to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class, Krishna book, Srimad Bhagavatam class in the morning, Krishna book in the evening, and read Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, so many Nectar of Devotion, so many wonderful books. And we can just absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness. And the more we do that, the happier we will be, and the more free we will actually become. Our spirit souls will actually begin to reestablish ourselves in the spiritual sky, even though we may still be in the material world. It's described, Prabhupada gave the example that it's just like a coconut that's in a shell. The husk of the coconut, and then there's the coconut inside. And when it gets very ripe, then you can shake the husk and the coconut rattles around inside. So when the spirit soul gets ripe with devotional service, then we become like that. We are not attached to this material body anymore, and we're actually functioning in the spiritual realm, even though the outer body may still look to be engaging in the material world. But in the inner self, the spirit self is actually totally fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual sky. And we can get to that place. Prabhupada says it many times, that I want you to be able to see Krishna in this very lifetime. And that is done by chanting Hare Krishna and always remembering Krishna. So that's why we come together, to help each other and to find out, well, how are you remembering Krishna? And can you help me remember Krishna? Or can I help you remember Krishna? That's what this association is all about. And so I really appreciate that all of you have come to the Sunday Feast, and all the others are joining us online. And if we encourage each other constantly in our Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will be so happy, and we will be acting in such a way that Krishna will want to see us, because that's what all the spirit souls in the spiritual world are doing. They're encouraging everybody, serve Krishna, do this for Krishna, do that for Krishna, and or asking, what can I do for Krishna? Can I do more for Krishna? Can you help me to do something for Krishna? Like that. So if we're thinking like that, with the motivation coming to the Sunday Feast, and we're always thinking, what can I do more for Krishna? Then our path back home, back to Godhead is guaranteed, and our true freedom will be achieved by absolute surrender to Krishna. In the material world, people think that if you surrender, it's just like even the conflict that's going on in Ukraine right now. And in the material situations, when you surrender, you're giving up freedom. But in the spiritual realm, when you surrender to Krishna, you gain freedom. You actually become free from all these, birth, death, old age, and disease, the four miseries of life that are constantly harassing us. And we actually attain our true spiritual free state. So that is done by surrender, and hopefully we can all surrender together and go back home, back to Godhead, back to Krishna. So I thank you very much for listening today, and I hope that I've been able to give you a little bit of an impetus to take up devotional service and to become truly free. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Sorry. So, all right, so now is the opportunity we have to engage with His Grace, Krsnadasa Kaviraja Prabhu. That was such a wonderful, enlivening class on, the definition of what it means to be fully free and how do we surrender. So thank you very much, Prabhu. So let's use this opportunity now to, perhaps if you have any questions or any comments, so for us in attendance in the temple, we can raise our hands. For the devotees online, you can make use of the Zoom feature, the reactions feature, to virtually raise your hand. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can share your thoughts in the chat. So, well, we have somebody here. Well,
I have a question, Prabhu. What should be the feeling or the emotion when you're chanting? Sometimes when it gets mechanical and the mind is chattering and we're saying, uttering a Mahamantra, but what should be the mind be focused on so that it's controlled even when it gets mechanical? Because I try always to get at least the feeling while doing. I don't want to do it mechanically, but yeah, what should we focus on?
Yeah, in the material world, when you do something over and over again, it can become very mechanical. And really, it's a great question because we really don't want to become mechanical in our chanting of Hare Krishna. And one of the main things to remember is that Krishna is in the name. So we should approach when our japa time, or any time that we're chanting Hare Krishna, and we should think just by remembering Krishna, by saying to ourselves, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Radharani and Krishna, because Hare is an address to Radharani, Mother Hara, in the vocative case is actually Hare. So it's Radharani and Krishna together dancing in the Maha Mantra. And they are with us, right with us, dancing on our tongue and dancing in our ears. And just remember that Krishna is right there. And then we should just be thinking, how can I now engage with you somehow, help you dance in the Maha Mantra, help serve the devotees that are serving you, and help others who may not even know about you, and just be thinking that I just want to remember that I want to serve Krishna in his name. And so if we think like that, and our mind may drift, and that happens always in the material world practically, our mind drifts. But if we just bring it back and go, oh, I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I want to be with Krishna and Radharani. I want to be there. I want to be there. And if we just keep bringing it back and bringing it back, eventually we will get rid of the material coverings and the material influences that are pulling us away from the Maha Mantra and taking us back to the material, and we'll become totally fixed in the sound vibration of the Maha Mantra, and we'll actually develop a taste, the ruchi. That's one of the very first, after the sort of sadhana, that and one engages in the sadhana bhakti because one has to, that one knows that I've got to chant my rounds, I've got to remember Krishna like that. We're sort of forcing ourselves to do it. But soon it'll become like a taste. It's described in the Nectar of Instruction that it's like somebody who has jaundice. When you have jaundice, sugar candy does not taste sweet, but by taking sugar candy, you actually become cured from the jaundice, and then you taste the real sweetness of the candy, the sugar candy. So the sweetness is there in the holy name, the real transcendental, unlimited sweetness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is right there in the holy name, and we're saying it, and he's right there, and we're not realizing it. But the more we do it, the more we will come to the point of realizing it and tasting that transcendental sweetness. So just remember that if I keep bringing myself back to remembering that Radharani and Krishna are right there in the holy name, I'll taste that transcendental sweetness. So that should keep us motivated to keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. Does that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, Prabhu, I did. Do we have any more questions or comments? Prabhu, I actually had a question. So what do like? How does one surrender to Krishna?
Well, I mean, there are many different ways. As we know, there are the 9 processes of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam. I think I may have missed one or two there. Anyway, there are many ways to serve Krishna, and actually, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says that the very first thing that one should do, really, is uh, by giving up our idea of material freedom by approaching a spiritual master, uh, and taking instruction from the spiritual master, rendering service unto him, and honoring him, work, and serving him like that. Then, by that surrender, then and giving up of our minute uh, illusion of freedom in the material world, by approaching a spiritual master, then one can actually, Krishna goes, all right, this person really does want to actually take part in our group. If you can't surrender to somebody who's in the group, you know, then it's pretty hard to get into a group, right? So the spiritual master is the representative of Krishna, who is part of that group, who's coming, and it's Diksha Guru, Shiksha Gurus, anybody who's telling us about Krishna is coming and saying, if you do this, you can, take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna like that, then you're engaging it with the group. And so there's different, and as you get into the group, there'll be more things, more services that you're given. And the more we chant Hare Krishna, we're asking for service. Oh, Mother Radharani, please engage us in your service, in Krishna's service, like that. So there'll constantly be more service coming along. So there's many different ways, and we just have to pray and pray and pray that we can somehow or other be engaged, and surrender to a spiritual master. But it's surrendering to the whole parampara, and it's surrendering to all the devotees at the same time. It's not that, oh, I'm just serving my spiritual master and I can neglect everything else. I can neglect all the devotees. No, no spiritual master would ever encourage that. He would say, you must serve the devotees. As Lord Chaitanya said, even, das das anu das, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant. Gopi Bhartu Padakamalor das das anu das. I'm the servant of the gopis who are and I want to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis who are serving Krishna, like that. So by serving the devotees, by serving the spiritual master, we serve Krishna. So it becomes a very practical thing as well. It's not just something ethereal. But when we sit down and chant our japa, then it's actually a very mystical a relationship that we are actually building, a spiritual mystical relationship that we're building with Krishna, and it can become more and more manifest. But it requires doing all those things, serving everybody. Trinada Pisunichena, I'm be lower than the blade of grass, more tolerant than the tree, and ready to offer all respects to others, not expecting anything in return. And if we can think like that, and then take up the service of everybody else. Even Srila Prabhupada said in that lecture one time, when he was talking about all the 4 classes of society, somebody got up at the end and said, do you consider yourself the first class man? And Prabhupada said, no, I'm the fifth class man because I'm the servant of everybody else. So that Srila Prabhupada fully realized that, and we have to come to that point of fully realizing it also, that I am the servant of everyone. If I hold a grudge against anybody, then who am I? I'm thinking I'm better than this person and they offended me somehow. But, that is so contrary to the understanding of Trinadapi Sunichena. We should never ever take offense, and we should be forgiving constantly. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I hope that answered it in some ways.
That was excellent, Prabhu. Do you have any questions or comments from Guru Prasad Prabhu?
Thanks, Prabhu. My humble obeisances. Thank you very much for enlightening presentation. Another thought came to my mind. We also having difficulty because we have a tendency to enjoy. So the enjoying tendency is there, but we do not know how the real enjoyment is. So we think enjoyment is having possessions and positions, So real enjoyment we still do not know. And that I think one can acquire the taste for real enjoyment only in the association of devotees, as I have learned. So I also tried to practice on my own at one point, but it didn't work. Thank God I realized that it's not working. I thought I could do it on my own, but it didn't work.
Right.
When we get back to the association of devotees, I think it's a very powerful, support we have in the association of devotees. So I always think that that's a wonderful thing that Prabhupada has arranged this society so we can all have such association. So
Right. One of the main purposes of ISKCON is to have a place where devotees can come together and associate. Yeah. So it's so wonderful. And I'm so grateful that all of you are there. I wish I could be in your association. I mean, I am, but I'm not at the same time, right?
Okay, do you have any more questions or comments from our online? Okay. I have just a follow-up question. Sorry, Prabhu. This question of surrender really. My mother even asked me today because she attended a Sunday program back in South Africa, in Pretoria, and she was in the program they said Krishna came, he said surrender, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and he said just chant. And so my mother got into a very nice philosophical discussion with me. Why does Krishna say you surrender, and then why is Mahaprabhu saying you must chant? And I tried to explain to her, no, it's the same. When you're chanting, you're surrendering. It's indirectly. And I was just hoping if you could perhaps say a few words about that, Prabhu.
Right. Well, really, all we don't own anything. We don't even own our body. We have no claim to anything except our consciousness, right? Our consciousness and our awareness, our self-awareness is all just being part and parcel of Krishna. So if our consciousness is self-centered and directed towards material things, then we are not surrendered and we are not happy, because in the material world nobody's happy. You may be happy for a short period of time, but it gets quickly taken away by death, disease, old age, so many horrible things that happen, and we see it in the news all the time. Everything horrible happening in the material world. Children suffering. I worked in a children's hospital. I saw so many children suffer like that. So, when Krishna says, or when Lord Chaitanya says, just chant Hare Krishna, what are we doing? We're just surrendering our consciousness, because our consciousness, instead of being absorbed in material things and trying to achieve things for ourselves, as soon as we just chant Hare Krishna, we're actually directing our consciousness towards Krishna, and that is surrender to Krishna. So you're right. It is actually the same thing. You know, it's just a nicer way, and it's the most simple way in Kali Yuga. In different ages, there were sometimes very difficult processes by which one had to surrender. One had to, even in the Satya Yuga, one had to meditate upon the lotus feet of the Paramatma for 100,000 years. I mean, that's a difficult surrender. But in Kali Yuga, our minds are so troubled and everything else that Lord Chaitanya just says, look, just chant Hare Krishna. And then instantly our consciousness is directed towards Krishna, and our lives are very short anyway, so Krishna gives us this very short, easy way of just connecting with him, and in the Bhagavatam it says that there are so many bad things about Kali Yuga, but the one good thing about Kali Yuga is that simply by chanting the holy names of the Lord, one can attain pure devotional service and go back home, back to Godhead.
Haribol. Okay, so any final closing comments, anyone? Okay, so thank you so much, Krsnadasa Kaviraja Prabhu, for that wonderful class. Very informative. I think it's just so important for us to just hear what it means to be free and how important it is to surrender. And I always tell myself, surrender is not a one-time process, it's a continuum process. We surrender every second by serving, and I think I sort of extracted that from your class today. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And we really hope to have your association in the temple, soon, or at least online, seeing you more. I know we see you in the Bhagavatam classes, as you said. Lakshmani Prabhu has done such a wonderful job of, getting us to associate with you. So it's a wonderful opportunity for all the devotees, and to please, attend Bhagavatam classes as well. The link is in the ISKCON email address, in the email. So please do attend. So thank you very much, Prabhu, and a very big Haribol to Mahaprabhu. Haribol!